In the previous lesson, we wrote a function that allows the user to send messages. In this lesson, we're going to write another function that allows the user to receive messages from their inbox in the smart contract. As always, we'll start off where we left off in the previous lesson, and one way to do that is to clone the GitHub repository using the branch that you see here. After the repository is downloaded, we move into that folder and we install our node dependencies before opening our project folder. Let's go ahead and go into app.js, and I'm going to go to the top and update our header. Before writing the receive messages function, let's finish the getMyInboxSize function. I'll first initialize a global variable. Now let's scroll down to the getMyInboxSize function. We first need to uncomment the line that calls this function inside of check user registration. We've already coded the majority of this function. All that's left is to update the front page using the value that we get from the function getMyInboxSize of the smart contract. First, we make sure that there are messages to retrieve. In which case we update the front page and also call the receive messages function to go retrieve those messages. If there aren't any messages to show, we simply exit the function. This logic saves us the cost of making an unnecessary call to the receive messages function. Now let's write the receive messages function. As we've done several times in the previous lessons, to make a call to the smart contract, we first need an object that represents the smart contract. Here, value is an array that contains the return variables of the smart contract receive messages function. If you go back to the receive messages function inside of chatway.sol, you'll see that the return values are content, timestamp, and sender in that order. We know the total number of messages that we need to retrieve from the global variable myInboxSize. So let's write a for loop to loop through these number of messages and retrieve each message separately. For each message that we retrieve, we need to create a row in our table, and in that row we need to create 3 cells. The cell that contains the date, the cell that contains the from address, and the cell that contains the contents of the received message. So let's go ahead and do that in HTML. Notice that the third cell that contains the content will be hidden by default. At this point, we've created our table. Now we need to write methods that allow the user to interact with it. We want the user to click on the rows because each row represents a message. And once they click on that row, we want to show them that message. So we need to code a dynamic on-click for loop here. The user may receive a lot of messages, so we need to create a method to clear the inbox. So let's create a button called clear inbox. I'm going to copy and paste a styling for my clear inbox button. Feel free to freeze the video now and copy this text. I'm going to add this to index.html using the append child method. Finally, let's add an on-click function to our clear inbox button. We can do this using a callback from a listener. Let's catch any errors before we leave this function. That's it for the receive messages function. Now let's code the clear inbox function. Let's make a call to the clear inbox function of our smart contract. Because we're going to be changing some state variables, I'm also going to determine the gas limit and the gas price in this case. In this case, all we really need to do is to remove the clear inbox button. And to do that, I'm going to use jQuery. Let's also set a status to let the user know that the inbox was cleared. And of course, let's catch any errors before we exit this function. Let's save this file before exiting. Before going to the console, let's make a slight modification in Truffle.js. I'm going to add the gas limit and gas price. This will be used when we're deploying the contract. Let's save this file. Now it's time to test our program. The first thing we need is an Ethereum node. We're going to use Ganache for that. So let's go ahead and launch Ganache. You can see I have 2 accounts. Now we need to deploy the contract using our custom Truffle script. We should see the transactions for the contract appearing in Ganache shortly. Now let's import these accounts into MetaMask. And to do that, we need to copy and paste the private key. Okay, now let me run a dev server so we can see our home page. Okay, let's switch to the first account we created in MetaMask. Let me open up the Chrome console to check for any errors. Looks like we do have an error, so let's go into app.js and that line to see what's going on. Looks like we forgot to put a period after cells. Back to our home page, and looks like the program is running error-free. Let's switch to the second user and register his inbox. We'll click OK, and we'll submit the transaction from MetaMask. After a while, we see that the inbox for the second user has been approved and created. And if we refresh the page, you can see that the second user appears in the user directory. Now we're ready to send a message. So let's copy the address of the contract owner and send him a message. We'll say, hello contract owner. We'll submit the transaction in MetaMask. And after a while, you can see we get a confirmation and also a receipt and the amount of weight that we spent. While we're here, let's send another message. We'll say, how are you? Now let's switch to the contract owner's account to see if we receive these messages. Don't forget to refresh the page every time you change an account. And you can immediately see the two received messages inside of the table. You can also see the clear inbox button under that table. As I click each row, the corresponding content of the message is shown in the received box. If I want to clear the inbox, I have to submit a transaction to MetaMask. Looks like we have another error. So let's go into app.js to see what's going on. We have a simple spelling mistake here. It's remove child. Let's save and close and go back to the server. And you can see that the messages have been cleared successfully and there's no error in our console. This concludes this lesson. If you had trouble following along, you can always download the final version of the code for this lesson using the git clone command with the appropriate branch that you see here. In the next lesson, we're going to deploy our application to a real network. I look forward to talking to you then.